Detroit, Michigan, a city that knew struggle and survival in equal measure. Its streets told stories of industry, innovation, and resilience. But not all stories had happy endings. Some lingered in the shadows, unresolved, casting a cold pall over the city's history. One such shadow belonged to Amy Green, a bright and ambitious 16-year-old whose life was stolen on a winter night in 1982. Her murder became one of Detroit's most infamous cold cases, haunting the city for decades. Amy's case wasn't forgotten, not by her family, and not by Detective Sarah Harper, who would one day pull her dusty file from the archives and refuse to let it go. What started as a review of a forgotten tragedy soon became a relentless pursuit of justice, a pursuit that would expose a serial predator, a trail of forgotten victims, and the determination of one woman to uncover the truth. Amy Green was a straight-A student, an aspiring writer who worked part-time at a local diner to save for college. She had dreams of becoming a journalist, eager to tell stories that mattered. On January 15, 1982, those dreams were cut short. Amy left the diner at 9:30 p.m., bundled against the freezing wind as she began her short walk home. It was a route she knew well, through snow-covered streets dimly lit by flickering streetlights. She never made it. The next morning, her body was found in an abandoned factory on Mack Avenue, a crumbling relic of Detroit's industrial past. She had been strangled, her scarf wrapped tightly around her neck, and her coat and gloves neatly folded beside her. Above her, scrawled in black marker on the peeling brick wall, were the words, "Too pure for this world." The brutality of the murder shocked the city. Amy's youth, her promise, made her death all the more devastating. Detectives worked tirelessly, combing through evidence, interviewing anyone who might have seen her that night. But the leads went nowhere. The case stalled, then grew cold, buried under the weight of time and forgotten by all but those who loved her. Fast forward nearly 40 years. Sarah Harper wasn't alive when Amy was murdered, but she'd grown up hearing about the factory girl. The unsolved case had become urban legend, a ghost story whispered among Detroit's new generation. When Harper joined the Detroit Police Department's cold case unit in 2021, she made it her mission to breathe new life into the investigation. Harper wasn't just motivated by justice. She was haunted by the idea of a killer walking free, living out their life while Amy's was reduced to a case number in a filing cabinet. "Every victim deserves their story to be told," Harper often said. Amy's story was waiting for an ending. The case file was faded and incomplete, a frustrating reminder of how much time had passed. The grainy black and white crime scene photos showed the factory's cold, empty interior, Amy's body a heartbreaking contrast to the desolation. Witness statements were sparse. Most recalled Amy as kind, quiet, and unassuming. No one could think of anyone who'd want to hurt her. But Harper noticed something strange. Amy's murder wasn't the only one with this level of detail. As Harper pored over the file, she discovered two other cold cases that bore eerie similarities. Linda Mathers, 1978, an 18-year-old waitress found strangled in a vacant lot. Her belongings were arranged neatly beside her, and the words "she deserved better" were written on a nearby wall. Karen Blake, 1980, a 20-year-old college student killed in an abandoned house. Her body was staged similarly, with the phrase "a perfect angel" left at the scene. Harper's heart sank. 3 young women, 3 nearly identical murders, and yet no one had connected them. How had this gone unnoticed? The similarities pushed Harper to re-examine the evidence. Advances in forensic technology gave her hope. Amy's scarf, still preserved in evidence storage, was sent for DNA analysis. It came back with a partial profile enough to confirm the killer was male, but not enough for an immediate match. It was a small breakthrough, but it gave Harper something to work with. As she dove deeper into the original investigation, she interviewed retired officers who had worked the case. One name kept coming up: Edward "Eddie" Lowry, a janitor at Amy's high school. Lowry had been questioned in 1982, but never charged. At the time, he was described as odd but harmless. Harper wasn't so sure. A search of Lowry's past revealed a troubling history. He had been fired from the school just months after Amy's murder for inappropriate behavior, though no charges were filed. More alarmingly, he had lived near all 3 murder sites. Tracking Lowry down proved difficult. He had changed his name in the early 1990s, disappearing from public records. Harper spent weeks following paper trails and digging through old addresses until she finally found him in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was living under the name Edward Lanson, working odd jobs and keeping a low profile. Harper obtained a warrant to collect his DNA and cleverly retrieved it from a discarded coffee cup. When the results came back, they were a match. The DNA on Amy's scarf belonged to Edward Lowry. With the evidence in hand, Harper and her team arrested Lowry at his home. At first, he denied everything, insisting he didn't know Amy and had never been to Mack Avenue. But as detectives pressed him, cracks began to form in his story. Lowry's calm demeanor gave way to agitation, and eventually, he confessed. Over the course of several hours, Lowry detailed his crimes in chilling clarity. He admitted to killing Amy, Linda, and Karen, describing how he watched them for weeks before making his move. He claimed he saw himself as a savior, taking them away from a corrupt world. The messages at each crime scene, he said, were his way of justifying his actions. They were too good for this world, he said, his voice devoid of remorse. I set them free. Lowry's trial was a media spectacle, drawing national attention. The courtroom was packed with reporters, victims' families, and curious onlookers. Harper testified, recounting the painstaking work that had brought Lowry to justice. Her words were powerful, a reminder of the importance of never giving up on a case. Lowry was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As he was led from the courtroom, Amy's family finally felt a measure of peace. Justice, though delayed, had been served. Amy Green's story became a symbol of resilience, not just for her family but for the city of Detroit. A mural was painted on Mack Avenue near the factory where her body was found, depicting Amy surrounded by doves in the Detroit skyline. Below it were the words, "Justice delayed but never denied." Detective Harper moved on to other cases, but Amy stayed with her. The case reminded her why she'd become a detective: to give voices to the silenced, to tell the stories that mattered. Detroit, a city of grit and rebirth, carried on, inspired by the determination of those who refused to let the past remain frozen.